Welcome to another edition of the Big East Rewind. I am Chuck Everson, your 7-foot host from Villanova University, and my partner, my point guard, even though he was a shooting guard there for a little while, my point guard, my main man, number 23, Sonny Sparrow from Syracuse. How are you, Sonny?
Chuck, I'm pretty over the moon excited. I feel that we have the greatest Orangeman ever today as our guest, and I can't wait.
I have to agree with you. 100% I have to agree with you. I mean, I remember watching this guy play when I first started to get into basketball and watching, and he was fantastic. And I didn't get to see him play at Syracuse, but I did see him in the NBA for a long, long time. In fact, he played with one of my buddies towards the end of his career with the Washington Bullets and Mitch Kupchak. He and Mitch Kupchak were teammates. So I'm going to ask him about that when we get going. But I'm really excited. And listen, Sonny, I'm going to introduce our guest now, but if we listed all his accolades, Sonny, the show would be over. That would be the show. So we have to, that would be it. I got to cut it down. I got to cut it down, Sonny, So, so our guest today was on the 50th anniversary all-time team in the NBA, the 75th anniversary all-time team. He's a Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, another Hall of Famer, Sonny, on the show, which is fantastic. Okay. And he's recently was inducted into the Syracuse University Ring of Honor, which is a very big deal at Syracuse, as you know. And he was the former mayor of Detroit Rock City, Sonny, please welcome to the show, the great Dave Bing. How are you, Dave? Good to meet you.
I'm great, Chuck. Good being with you, and obviously being with Sonny, one of Syracuse finest.
That's it. Sonny's the guy over there at Syracuse. He keeps it all together. He's like the glue over there from the alumni, right?
Yes, he is. He's been an outstanding friend. It's too bad we didn't have a chance to play together. I had more assists because Jimmy thought he was the guy that gave me the assist. Sonny would have given me much more.
Yeah. Coach Boeheim, so you were teammates with Coach Boeheim and roommates, right?
Yeah, Jimmy and I came in same time in '62, and ironically, here's a guy that came in as a kind of walk-on. He didn't have a scholarship his freshman year because all of the scholarships had already been given out. And in the sophomore year, one guy left the team, and Jimmy took over that scholarship, and we played together in the backcourt the last 3 years together.
Wow. And that's back in the days when freshmen didn't play, right, Dave?
That's correct. Yeah.
So
as freshmen, well, I would say the year before we came in, I think Syracuse lost like 23 games in a row over a 2-year period. And so when 7 of us came in together as freshmen, nobody really knew what to expect. We had a new coach, we had a new field house, we had these 7 young guys coming in as freshmen. And, we scrimmage against the varsity, and we beat the varsity every time. So all of a sudden, basketball then took on a different kind of framework in everybody's minds in Syracuse. But the 3 years that we played varsity together, we had a lot of success, and I am very close to all of the teammates that I enjoyed when I played at Syracuse.
That's great. That's really great.
Now, Chuck, he's being a little bit modest. You couldn't get in to see the freshman team because tickets were gone. People wanted to see them play versus the varsity team.
So how did that work, Dave? There was just a freshman team, and you played other freshmen from the same. Was it the same schedule as the quote unquote varsity, or is it? How did that work?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Whoever the varsity played, usually we played their freshman team, but there were a couple of other teams that we played where the varsity played somebody else. But it was a good time, and it gave us in that freshman year a chance to look at the team that was in front of us and try to figure out how we were going to beat some of those guys out, and so that we would, we'd have time to play.
So talk about, you're originally from the DC area, right?
Yep.
So how were you recruited, and how did they get you to come all the way up north to Syracuse? Because that wasn't common back then.
there was a high school all-star game in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where
Okay.
they had a team from DC, they had a team from New York, they had a team from New Jersey, and they had a team from Philadelphia. So there were 4 different cities that played in this tournament. And DC had 3 All-Americans on the team. Jerry Chambers, who was my teammate in high school for a short period of time before he transferred to another school. Then there was Johnny Austin, who was an All-American at Boston College. And we played against some very, very good players in that tournament. And Fred Lewis, who was the incoming coach, was there scouting. And everybody talked about, but Bob Cousy had just recruited Johnny Austin to go to Boston College. And I was recruited heavily by Maryland because that was the hometown school, even before Georgetown, Georgetown. And so, but I didn't want to go to the ACC because at that time, ACC had no black players. And there was, most of the ACC was in the South. And my parents are from the South. I had been to the South as a kid. I said, I don't think that's for me.
Yeah.
So when I visited Syracuse, I was recruited by football players, Ernie Davis and John Mackey, because the basketball players weren't that impressive. So Fred Lewis said, I'm going to put you with 2 All-American football players. And they convinced me to go to Syracuse.
So you went on your visit and stayed with Ernie Davis and John Mackey. I'm running the comparisons in my head, Sonny. You know where I'm going. I stayed with Sonny Sperrett and Sean Kearns, and you stayed with those guys. What was that like, hanging with those guys?
Ernie had just won the Heisman Trophy, and you just assume that a guy with all of the accolades that he had achieved, he'd be hard to talk to. He'd be hard to be around, big head and all of that, but a down to earth, easygoing guy. And a very smart guy from an academic standpoint. And he talked to me about not just sports at Syracuse, about what I could do from an academic standpoint, that if you graduate from Syracuse, you got a chance to be something different in life because, the education that you'll get will serve you well. And so John Mackey, because Ernie was a senior at that time, John Mackey was a junior. So John became my big brother my freshman year. And up until his death, we were still pretty close.
I wanted to ask you the Syracuse 8 and the racial climate, right? As you come to Syracuse in '62. First, talk about a little bit about the racial climate, because Ernie Davis, I'm not sure everybody knows, was the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner. And of course, he's a local. He's from Elmira. He's right down Route 17 from me. And that started, changing things a little bit, but there was also some of his teammates that was the Syracuse 8. Talk a little bit about the racial climate when you got to school.
Well, I didn't realize growing up in DC in the area that I came from, I never went to school with anybody that didn't look like me. I never had a teacher that didn't look like me, and never an administrator. So when I visited Syracuse, I had no idea what the racial makeup was. And once I got there, I found out we had 14,000 undergraduate students, and we had 100 African Americans, 80 boys, and 20 girls. So social life was horrible.
That's tough.
To say the least.
That's tough.
Yeah.
But I'll
That's
tell
not
you.
good odds, Dave.
Oh my God. Most of the guys were athletes because, Syracuse is a very wealthy school, very expensive school. And so I never would have been able to go there. My parents wouldn't have been able to send me there if they had to pay for it. So I had, coming out of high school, I had probably 60, 70 scholarships from across the country. I only visited 5 schools, and the last school I visited was Syracuse, and I was so impressed with Syracuse. And the guy who was my first roommate, he and I visited the same weekend. He was a high school All-American from Weehawken, New Jersey, Frank Nicoletti. And he's still one of my best friends. So both of my roommates, Frank as a freshman and Jimmy the last 2 years, we're still very close.
Frank is from my wife's hometown, Weehawken, that little small town.
Weehawken, New Jersey.
They reconnected at the last reunion we got together at.
So Dave, before you even got to the Hill up in Syracuse there, you had an injury, right, as a kid that really made it difficult for you, your peripheral vision. What happened, and how did that affect you on the court?
Yeah, at the age of 5, I was, we didn't have a lot of toys to play with. You come from a family that wasn't very well off financially, so you had to make do. And long story short, I played, it was a horse game, and I fell on a stick, and a nail hit me in my left eye. And, my parents didn't have the insurance to take me to the hospital. I was bloodshot, and they felt that, it was something that we could overcome. But I had damage in the eye that could not be corrected. So even today, my left eye, I can hardly see out of it. It's very fuzzy, it's blurred. And my whole career, I had to play basically with one eye. And in high school, I was a good baseball player. I played baseball before basketball, but I was a right-handed hitter. And so with my left eye facing the picture as my lead eye, in high school, I was okay because, high school players are just so-so. When I got to college, my freshman year, the college players were much, much better. So I said, I can't play baseball anymore, so I'm just going to stick with basketball.
Yeah, you'd need to have an open stance so that your right eye could have a better view.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Sonny's an old baseball guy too, So
Yep.
So how that had to be some challenge. I mean, I guess because it happened so young that you kind of adapted your game to that. And was that the same eye that gave you a problem when you in your pro career when you had the detached retina? Was that the same?
That was my good eye.
I
had a detached retina in my right eye, and that was like in my 4th year.
Right.
And at that time, I'm only 26 years old. I had led the league in scoring. I was rookie of the year. I was on a really tough path. And the first thing I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to see again, and I'm never going to be able to play. And thank God, the team that had the operation up at the University of Michigan did an outstanding job. I missed 45 games that 4th season. And when I came back, it's ironic. I played against the Knicks, who had Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe.
Yeah.
But we were all good friends. And, they were hoping that I was going to recover and, be the player that I was before the injury. And I think they took it easy on me the night that I came back after missing 45 games playing against them, because everybody was kind of afraid to hit you, to touch you, the whole bit. And the game then was quite different because it was much more physical than it is today. We got away with stuff you never get away with today. But in a long story short, I played my last 7 years with a left eye that I, couldn't see out of anyway, and the right eye I started using contact lenses. But what happened is that I lost depth perception, and I lost some vision, peripheral vision. And I started, the first thing when I came back, I had to look at colors. I could look at colors and see, and that's the way I identified my teammates.
Wow.
Because I still had blurred vision and couldn't see. So it took a while to adjust.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Did other teams try to take advantage of that?
Oh yeah, but we didn't try to make it a big thing, and there were certain guys. There was a Norm Van Leer, for example, who
he was mean.
Yeah,
he was a tough guy.
That backcourt in Chicago between Sloan and Van Leer were tough.
2 tough guys, yeah.
And there were some other guys in the league that tried to take advantage of you, saying that he can't go this way, he can't go that way, he's not going to be able to see this or that. And once again, I said, over a period of time, you just make adjustments.
Wow. So let's go back to. I'm sorry, Sonny. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Chuck.
Let's go back to the Syracuse days for a minute now. So you get in now. You're ready to play. You got through your freshman year, and you're rooming with Coach B, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What was it like rooming with him? And also tell us about you going. Did he bring you? Tell us about when he took you to his house for Thanksgiving dinner.
I know where you're going.
Well, first of all, as a roommate, we were like night and day. You know, I came from a family and a background where you were responsible for cleaning up your room, making sure your bed was made up, and all of the little things you had to do. Jimmy was just the opposite. Jimmy, instead of making his bed up and changing his sheets, he'd turn them over from one side to the other. You know, we had to wash our own clothes. I mean, there were a lot of little things that we did and got to know each other. But here he is, a white guy from a little small town in New York. And, you know, I'm a big city guy from D.C., a black guy. And most people say, you guys are, you know, this makes no sense. Why are you guys rooming together? But Jimmy was really trying to find himself because he didn't have that scholarship as a freshman. And then as a sophomore, he was trying to find himself to make sure that people respected what he brought to the table. And he was also always a very cerebral player. He knew the game. He knew angles. He could shoot the ball when he was free. I mean, he wasn't a really great athlete. You know, he wasn't that fast. He wasn't that big. He couldn't jump that well, but he was smart. And so what he'd say to me all the time, you know, you're going to get double teamed a lot. And the guard that's guarding me is going to be double teaming you. So I'm going to be free. And I'm going to be in this position. I'm going to be in that position. So when you get double teamed, I'll be ready. I'll just, you know where I'm going to be. Get me the ball. But going to his home, we were, it's a holiday festival, holiday time. So none of us were able to leave school. And Jimmy didn't live far away. So he says, I'll take 4 or 5 of you guys and take you down and we're going to eat Thanksgiving dinner at my home. So Carl Vernick, who was a senior that time, Frank Nicoletti, myself, and another guy, Norm Goldsmith. We go down to Jimmy's home, and we didn't know what to expect. Long story short, we didn't know that his father was an undertaker, and everything was in their home. So I mean, they had real bodies in the home, and here we are going down there to eat Thanksgiving dinner, and none of us were comfortable just based on that environment. But his parents were good people, and we all got along very well. And I can't tell you all of the stories that happened at his home on that trip. But long story short, we remain good friends today.
Dave, I'm sure what happened when you were sleeping at night in your bunk and when your roommates, coach was over going, pass Jimmy the ball. Pass Jimmy the ball. He was repeating it. So when you woke up, you're like, hey,
subliminal.
The ball.
That's funny.
He was working an angle.
Yeah, but I tell you, he became a very good player. You know, as a walk-on and somebody who had to prove himself his second year. The junior and senior year, you know, I averaged like, you know, 25, 28 points a game the 2 different years. And Jimmy was still averaging 12, 14 points a game. So it wasn't like he couldn't play. I mean, he could play.
So I have another, like a little bit of a weird thing that I noticed when we do our due diligence here, because we are professional journalists here. I don't know if you realize that, you know. Even though we both were hoopers like you, I mean, we still, you know, we get our stuff done. Did you play basketball in the park with Marvin Gaye?
Marvin Gaye and I came from the same neighborhood in D.C. Right. Yep. And Marvin used to come down and, you know, he wasn't good enough that we chose him on our team to play. So he'd always be on the outskirts singing and had a great voice.
Oh, yeah.
And so every once in a while, somebody feels sorry for him and would choose him to play. And then we find out why we didn't choose it. So Marvin left DC way before I did, even before I went to Syracuse and came to Detroit. So when I got drafted by Detroit, Marvin was a big star, and so we met, and he showed me a few things around the city of Detroit, and our friendship just grew. So it was a great relationship, no doubt about it.
It's funny because we're doing this show, about 120 of these, right, Sonny?
Right.
So we've done about 120 of these shows, and that is the second time that somebody said they were playing basketball in the park with Marvin Gaye.
Yep.
The first guy that told us that was Willie Glass,
Willie
right?
Glass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said he was down. He said his brother brought him home. They lived right up the street from the park. He said his brother brought him home, not even knowing who the guy was, but Marvin was thirsty, looking for water. And next thing you know, he's signing photos and everything in the house when the mom realized it was him. So it's just interesting that you were able to do that. And what did you guys do? Have him sing the national anthem before you started running up and down over there when you realized maybe he wasn't such a good player?
He thought he was a great athlete. He realized he couldn't play basketball too well. So then he tried to transfer over to football. So at that time, he became very friendly with the two top guys playing with the Lions, Lem Barney and Mel Farr.
Oh, yeah.
And so he actually went out because Joe Schmidt was the coach at that time. And Marvin wanted to try out for the Lions. And because he was so close with Lem and Mel, they allowed him to go to training camp. But Joe Schmidt was smart enough to make sure that he didn't get hurt because he was a star already at that point in time. But he went out and he was in training camp, and needless to say, he didn't make the team, and he went on to stardom.
He did pretty good for himself. You can't deny that. Not bad.
Not bad.
That's all right.
So when you're a senior, what does the Syracuse basketball team now look like as far as in the competitive arenas that you're in, going from, as you stated, 29 straight losses coming into your recruitment? What does it now look like now? Where are you guys at?
Our senior year, we were fifth in the country.
Fifth in the country.
Yep. And we played in a tournament out in California. Vanderbilt at that time had Clyde Lee, who was an All-American, and they were number 3 in the country. And we went out there. We were undefeated. I think we were 9-0. We lost. We beat St. John. We beat Northwestern. Then we lost in the championship to Clyde, to Vanderbilt. And on our way back, we were 9-1, and we were still ranked in the top 10. And we played Creighton on the way back, and they had a guy by the name of Neil Johnston, who was an All-American. And we lost to them. And we ended the season 23-5. And we lost to Duke in the quarterfinals down in Raleigh. Had we beat Duke, we'd have been in the Final Four. And in 1966 was a great year. It was a great year. Kentucky, Duke, Western Kentucky, and Utah. Those were the 4 teams in the Final Four. But we had a nice run. We made back then the NIT was comparable to the NCAA.
Right.
And in our sophomore year, we were 17-7. We went to the NIT in New York, and we lost to NYU that had Barry Kramer, Happy Harrison, and Stan McKenzie. 3 guys from that team went on to play in the NBA, and we lost to them. Our senior year, we lost in the Holiday Festival. It was a big thing. They had Cassie Russell from Michigan. They had Bill Bradley from Princeton. They had me at Syracuse, and we had just beat Princeton the year before down in Miami. And Bradley fouled out with about 16 minutes to play in the game and was held to 16 points, which was his collegiate low. And so the news really did a big thing on one of my teammates, Sam Pensil, saying,
Hey,
Sam Pensil held Bradley to 16 points. They never said, he fouled out with 16 minutes to play. So we play in New York and in Madison Square Garden, and it was a big thing. I wanted to play against Michigan and play against Cassie Russell because I had already played against Bradley. But we played Princeton in the Garden, and Bradley was just unbelievable. He came back, and I think Sam was a little upset that he had to try to play him again. I think he got him to about 36, and we lost to Princeton in the Garden.
Wow. Wow.
so from obscurity to number 5 in the country, not a bad run.
Yeah,
Now,
we were.
Now talk about the next step of the NBA draft. I mean, it's not what it is now with all the hoop and all the hype and all that stuff, but you're on the board as going 1 or 2, right?
Right.
You or Kazi, that's the plan. Tell us what goes on now. I'm not sure everybody knows.
Yeah, I was sure that I was going to the Knicks because, out of the 3 years that we played varsity, we played in New York probably eight times. And it was nothing like playing in New York in the old Garden. I thought Kazi would go to the Pistons because he's right up the road in Ann Arbor, and he was the number 1 college player. I was the number 2 college player, and back then, like you said, all of the hoopla that goes on now in draft wasn't like that back then.
Right.
They flipped a coin between the worst 2 teams, Detroit and New York, and Dave DeBusschere was the player coach for Detroit. He called tails that came up heads, and red. Obviously, Kazi was the number 1 college player, so the Knicks picked him. And I came to Detroit, and I was upset. There were a lot of my teammates and schoolmates because the Knicks was the big thing on the East Coast, and everybody had made the assumption that that's where I was going to play. It didn't happen that way, and the way things turned out, I was fortunate that I came to Detroit, and then I've never left.
Hey, listen, it worked out better than anybody ever thought, right, Dave? I mean, look at what happened and where you wound up. I know Cassie. I got to play for him in the CBA, and he was still taking meal money from guys in practice, man. I was like, I couldn't believe how good he could shoot the ball. I remember the old Knick teams. I'm old enough when I was a kid to see those guys play, and it was once you got to know him, he was a really good guy. He was very nice, very good guy. We always had a lot of fun, but he took everybody's money and nobody realized how good he could shoot the ball.
And now he's doing that in golf.
Is he really?
So, yeah. He's a damn good golfer, and he's now a minister. And he came to Detroit. Yeah, he came to Detroit to preach at one of the churches that I used to go to, and I think it was the first sermon that he had, and outstanding. And so we're friends today. So we still, I'd say, every 2 or 3 times a year, we're in contact with each other.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm glad.
Talk about the pay disparity, because I don't know if people understand that, right? Kazi got like a record contract, right? And you had to work as a bank teller in the summers, right? Like,
yeah,
that's mind-boggling,
Well, being in New York, it's a different kind of city from Detroit, that's for sure. Cost of living and everything else is quite different. I think Kazi signed something like a contract his first year for about $25,000. My first contract was $16,000, but I only signed a 1-year contract. And I think Kazi signed either a 3 or 4-year contract. So after my rookie season, winning Rookie of the Year, we drafted, meaning Detroit, we drafted as the number 1 player, Jimmy Walker. And that was the first year of the ABA. So Jimmy got a huge contract because, the ABA and the NBA were competing against each other. But here I am now, as this number 1 guy coming in, and he plays the same position that I play, but I've already won Rookie of the Year. So I waited until he signed his contract before I ever sat down to negotiate. And I never had an agent ever in my whole
That's what I was
12
going to
years.
ask you. You did it yourself, right?
Never had an agent because I said, I think I'm smart enough that I kind of know my value. And I don't think anybody can negotiate for me better than me. And then I got to pay somebody, anywhere from 4% to 10% to negotiate for me. I don't think I'm going to do that. So anyway, long story short, I signed a 2-year contract my second year for $75,000, 35 and 40, with a stipulation that if I had a really good second year, we would renegotiate the third year. Well, I won the scoring championship my second year, so I was ready to renegotiate. Yeah, so I went in, and that was, and still the ABA was still coming on pretty strong. And I had a choice at one time in my career to go to the Washington team over in the ABA before they moved to Virginia. So the Pistons had to match an offer that was given to me by Washington, and it took me 5 years to get to 6 figures.
Right.
But when you look at what's happening today, oh my God, we have to look at our parents and say, why in the hell did you guys wait for a while? The kind of money guys are making today is just unbelievable. I'm happy for them, but I tell you, it's a business. Back then, it wasn't so much a business. It still was a great sport, but now it's a huge global business, and guys just making tons of money.
I got to ask you because this comes up now. I don't know if this had anything or gambling and their potential like influence. I remember, I mean, something was going on in the college ranks and stuff like that. Was that ever like discussed with you guys at Syracuse and then in Detroit? I mean, talk a little bit about, was that in the background anywhere?
No, I never ever remember. Even drugs weren't prevalent back then. I didn't. But the drug thing hit toward the end of my career. I would say back in 72, 73, marijuana and cocaine that hit the league, all sports, pretty heavy. But I didn't know much about guys gambling, but I did know a lot of guys who were doing drugs. And it ruined a lot of players. Guys lost money, they lost friends, they lost family. But now gambling is one. Hey, gambling is big today. Now in the sports itself, you can't bet on sports. You're not supposed to. I would say. Because I see a couple of Detroit Lions got caught gambling, betting on a couple of football games, not against on their own team, but against other teams in the league, and got kicked out of the league for a while. So guys got to be very careful, what they do with their lives now.
Wow.
So you make a home in Detroit, right?
Yes.
And then after that, after your career, your playing days are over, you continue to be a talk about major influence and impact. Talk about what you did and what was appealing to you. And then your road to, you got in the political arena, you had your own business, you were a minority owned, one of the first minority owned steel companies, right? Talk a little bit about now competing in that arena in the business world.
Yeah. Well, once again, from my 4th, 5th year on, I made good money at that time. So when I finished playing, I had money because I had deferred compensation. So I had money that would last me another 4 or 5 years. But I had to think about what am I going to do for a second career. I was 34 years old when I retired. And, Detroit being the car capital of the world, I got to know a lot of people in the business, in the car business, and all of the products that go into making a car. So I got into the steel business after 2 years of training with a steel company and decided this is something that I think I want to do. And this is where the education from Syracuse really helped me. And after 2 years out of basketball, and 2 years of training in a steel company, I decided, I think I can do this and I want to run my own company. And so I started my company in 1980 with 4 people. Year one, we did about a couple of $1 million in sales in year one. And then by the 30th year, we had grown to 1,300 people, to about 300 million in sales. And, I'd always been really involved in the community here in Detroit, going back to schools, going back, talking to the young kids. And at the age of 64, I said, I had enough of this. It's time. I've made money. I got a good life. My kids are in good shape. So it's time for me to enjoy life. At that time, we had a young mayor that got into all kinds of trouble here in the city of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick. And I was selected to be on a search committee to look at who should replace him as mayor, because the business community was gung-ho saying, we'll never invest in the city of Detroit as long as Kilpatrick is mayor. We need another mayor. So I'm serving on this committee, selection committee. And after, interviewing 6 or 7 people, the business community came to me and said, you know what, we think you should do this. And I said, why me? I'm not a politician. They said, no, but you're known, we trust you. You got a good business background. You never left this community. People love you and they will vote for you. Well, I didn't live in Detroit at the time. I lived in the suburbs. My wife, who's a Detroiter, we had just built a home. And she says, well, I'm not moving back to Detroit. If you want to go, I support you. I think you're the right guy at the right time, but I'm not going to move back. We just built this home. I'm going to stay here. So anyway, long story short, I had to move back into Detroit and establish residency. And I took over the last 8 months of the Kilpatrick second administration, second term. Then I ran for 4 years and won. And that's when Detroit we had to file bankruptcy because I'm sitting there as mayor and I couldn't borrow money. You can't, I don't want to miss payroll, and all of the services that you're providing for the citizens was very, very hard. So the governor and I had a pretty good relationship, and we agreed that bankruptcy was the best thing to get some of the debt off the books. We were $18 billion in debt. And by the time we finished the negotiation for bankruptcy, we wrote off $7 billion. And so that was a turnaround of the city starting to come back. And now the city is doing really, really well.
Wow. I mean, you had no aspirations of one day being mayor, and then just all of a sudden, because you were looking for the right guy, that was it?
That was it. They said I was the right guy at the right time. And it took me a while to buy into that, quite frankly, because I was, at a point in my life where I had a good career as an athlete. I had a good career from a business standpoint. And I wanted to enjoy life a little bit because the kids were grown. And I said, it's time to maybe travel and enjoy myself a little bit. So my wife and I wanted to do that. But we said, nah, it's a calling and you're the right guy at this time. So maybe you should do it. I did it. They wanted me to run another term. And I said, oh, no, I can't run another term.
So what was a typical day like of being the mayor of Detroit?
Because I was an entrepreneur in the automotive industry, my day starts early. And so, I'm up at, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the office by 6:30, 7 o'clock. And, you work a long time, a lot of hours. And so, to be successful trying to turn the city around as mayor, I was somewhat prepared for the long hours and the people that I had to meet with. And luckily, because I was a business person, I met most of the leadership in the business arena. And they were very supportive, very helpful. And, they made my job easier, I should say. But, I think playing basketball, a team sport, helped me running for mayor, because you understand how important people are. That you may have the title, you may have the responsibility, but if you don't have the right people doing what they're supposed to do, you're not going to be successful. And I learned that from sports. I learned that from basketball for sure. I knew what my strengths were. I knew what my weaknesses were, and I played to my strengths. And I utilized my teammates in basketball to help me, achieve what I achieved. But then I had to do the same thing in business, and then the same thing in the political arena.
So now you're the mayor. How many calls you get? Hey, Dave.
Oh my God! Oh,
you get me on this.
And all of the things that people want you to do. I mean, it's amazing what people will do to get you to do things for them. All of the payments under the table, et cetera, et cetera. But I've never been into that. I've always felt you had to work for what you got. And so I was an honest broker. So I never took. I wouldn't let anybody take me out for dinner. I mean, I paid for everything out of my own salary, because I didn't take salary my first 2 years as mayor, because of what I was coming into. The guy, just did a lot of under the table stuff. I said, I don't want to be a part of that. So you had to be very careful. As a matter of fact, I lost a lot of money because I was serving on 4 different boards.
Right.
Major boards. And I was probably earning $200,000 to $250,000 a year just from board fees. But There was going to be a conflict of interest by serving as mayor and serving on all of these boards where the city had, where it was competitive. So I had to give up all of the boards in order to do what I thought was the right thing.
It was a cleansing process, right? You had to clean yourself from that.
Yes, absolutely.
Not get dirty by association. You had to establish, this is Dave Bing, this is how I roll, and this is how Detroit's going to look.
Absolutely.
That's a turnaround. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
So I got to ask you now, because you had mentioned it a number of times. Your work with the community, your work with some of the youth, and I know that still goes on today, and I want to ask you more about that. But talk about what that looked like, because I know that's near and dear to the core of who you are, and talk a little bit about that.
As mayor, as a player and as a business person, I mean, there was just certain places that I would go and where I was comfortable. And as mayor, you had to go everywhere across the city. And all of a sudden, you saw a lot of the ugly things that were going on, how people lived, even today, broken families are a big, big thing. I don't care what city you're in. And it's a big strain and responsibility on women, because in a lot of cases, boys, black or white, if they don't have a man in their life, if the dad is not there and there's not another significant man in their life, that's when they stray away and start doing some crazy stuff. And I saw a lot of that going on. And I said, what I'd like to do is to start a foundation where it's going to be a mentoring program, and it's going to be one-on-one. It's not just about going making speeches to kids and happy times. It's about having a one-on-one relationship. So I selected 4 schools initially, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and we had like 40 boys in total in the program in the beginning. And all of these boys came from a single parent home with a mother or the aunt or a sister was the head of the house. And as boys become teenagers, they don't want to pay attention to a female at that, you get to a certain age. It's like, I'm a man and I can do what I want to do, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd say over 50% of the boys that started in the 9th grade in high school never graduated from high school. So, if you don't graduate from high school in the competitive arena that we're in today, you're not going to have a chance to make it in life. And so a lot of our kids, we teamed them up with a successful man, and it was all black boys from the city of Detroit, from the public school system. And we had over 100+ boys in our program at one time.
Wow.
And we had a 100% graduation rate. And we would have the mentor meet with the boys at least once a week. I would meet with the boys at least once every month. And we take boys to places where they've never been in the city. And get them to start thinking differently about their lives, what they got exposed to. Because if you don't know what's out here, you don't know what to hope for. And so we took boys on trips to DC, to Chicago, to New Orleans, to Atlanta. Boys had never been out of the city of Detroit. And all of a sudden, they see somebody cares about me. Somebody thinks that I'm okay. And like I said, our boys have done exceedingly well. We've got a lot of our boys that have gone to college, and a few of them have graduated from college. So it's going well.
So you started this, and these are children of color. Was all your mentors men of color or not?
Yes, yes. Because I wanted the boys to be able to relate with somebody that they were comfortable with.
Someone
But I
looks
mean,
like
and I got a lot of white friends who said, you know, I want to help. And I said, okay, I want you to help, but not right now. I want to establish this foundation and let our boys know that the conversation should not be about, we got to go somewhere else to get somebody else to care about us, to help us. We got to do this for ourselves. And that started, a role, I guess I would say, where the guys felt good about it, the mentors, the men, the boys felt good about it. And then over time, we were starting to bring other people in and introduce them to other folks.
Wow.
So talk about, I know that Derrick Coleman and the relationship and helping get Derrick at least acclimated to Syracuse, at least getting it on his radar. So talk about what you saw in a young Derrick Coleman.
Now, I met Derrick, he was 13 years old when he moved from Alabama to Detroit. And I knew his high school coach who said, I got this kid coming in. He's 6'3", 6'4", and he's only 13 years old. So, we need to get him some clothes. We need to try to get him a job, and blah, blah, blah. Well, Derrick, not being from here, didn't know me from anybody. But he came into my company, and I think he looked around and he saw a lot of faces that looked like him. And he says, okay, let me see what's going on here. So we became friends. I employed him, and it took him late into the first year of his employment where he saw some plaques and stuff that said, NBA, Pistons, and he finally hit him. He says, "Did you ever play?" And I said, "Yeah, I played a little bit." And I said,
a little bit.
And so I said, "Do your research? Do your research," which he did. And he came back to me. He said, "You're dirty, man. Why didn't you tell me who you were and what you did and blah blah blah?" But he became like a son. And so I told him in the beginning when we met him, I'm gonna send you up to Syracuse every summer to Jimmy's basketball camp. And he became an All-American high school player and one of the top 5 in the country. But because he was close to Syracuse and had been up there, he committed to Syracuse early on. And needless to say, he had just a tremendous career at Syracuse and then in the NBA also. So he's still here. We're still very close. I just talked to him yesterday, and he's doing well. He's doing well.
Well, he's got like the DC elite. He's got some things going on that I know came from you, because it's got a lot of parallels in the youth and the community, in the water and Flint and some of the other initiatives that he's doing. You guys have to have those conversations. What's his interest in that?
Oh, same interest as mine. So he wants to give back. He wants to help. He knows that somebody helped him to get where he is, and he's doing the same thing. So he has a basketball. He has a tournament a league that actually goes almost year round.
Yeah,
he has probably over 1,000 kids that plays basketball, girls and boys, and from ages I think 10 to 21. So he stays with these kids, and really he's doing a nice job.
Yeah. Dave, have you had any of the kids from your program come back and mentor other young kids?
Yes, and we stress that if we've made an impact on your life by what we're doing for you, we want you to do the same thing as you are successful in your life. Come back and
Wow.
because they're at an age where they can communicate with these kids better than we can. I mean, a lot of the kids would look at us as old men. You know, you guys can't do this, you don't know that, and so when you get
Right.
somebody close to their age that had some of the same problems that they endured when they were growing up, you know, they relate well together. So we've had at least 10 or 12 guys that left
Wow.
their program and came back as mentors.
How
Yeah,
great is that? I mean,
that
that's
really
got to make you
bridges the
feel
gap.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
How great is that?
Yep.
That's really cool. I mean, and so, and what types of, what did they wind up doing with their lives? What types of businesses were they in that they were able to come back and mentor somebody else?
Well, some guys, the ones that went away to college, and we don't stress that every kid, the only way that you're going to be successful is you have to go to college. You
Right.
know, there, with Detroit being rebuilt the way it is right now, we get kids in skilled trades. So we got kids that we had a mentor who had a painting company, and he said he couldn't find good employees. So we took 3 or 4 of our kids and say, okay, I've got a nice grant. If you train the kids, we can pay the kids while you train them. Once you train them, you have to hire them, and you have to hire them at the going rate. So
Right.
that's worked out well. We had another guy with a construction company. We had about 4 or 5 mentors who were entrepreneurs. So we try to match some of our kids up with entrepreneurs, giving them skilled trades or giving them the education that they need to think about becoming an entrepreneur themselves. And
Yeah.
so we've got some kids now who, without a doubt, are going to be successful entrepreneurs.
That's
Now
awesome.
that's
I mean, we have,
the Bing Youth Institute, right?
Yep.
And you
we,
guys, you do some training in this trades?
Yeah, we like I said, we got guys training for painting. We got guys now training for plumbing, training for the electricians, things that they can make a lot of money. I mean, you talk
oh
about
Yeah.
yeah,
guys, you can make $80,000 to $100,000 a year in those trades, and then if you're good enough to become an entrepreneur, you can do that.
Yeah.
it sounds a lot like we had Jerry Walker on who played at Seton Hall, and it sounds an awful lot like what he's doing in Jersey City. Very, very similar thing. And he's had kids come back as well. I think it's great. You got to get some positive role models in front of everybody. And you're right. I mean, college is not for everybody. There's a spot for everyone, and you don't have to necessarily go to college to make a good living and take care of your family, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Wow, that's great stuff, man. That's really good stuff.
So I got to listen. Coach B doesn't listen to the show, so you got to share a good Coach Boeheim story. He's not going to hear it. It'll be just between the three of us.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think now. Frank Nicoletti, who was the first roommate, used to come in the room when Jimmy and I first started rooming together as sophomores. And Frank was very physical, and he'd come in and actually just manhandle Jimmy in the room, because he always said, I roomed with Dave as a freshman, and we should have roomed together the whole time. And you came in, and you took him away, and there was some funny stuff that went on. I got to be careful with the stories though, because Jimmy and I are still good friends.
Yeah, no. He when he speaks of you, you can see he gets, and it's not easy for him, but he gets emotional and
Yeah,
at the many different functions.
we had a unique, very good relationship because we came from 2 different backgrounds, and I think both of us grew from the relationship. So I'm going to have to leave. I said my wife is getting ready to get out of here, so I'm going to have to leave for a moment.
No
Okay.
problem.
Well, listen,
Well, we
thank you
appreciate it.
so much for joining us, Dave. We appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us. And thank you for coming out and hanging with us tonight.
Well,
Appreciate
thank
Thank you
you.
for a little lesson on marriage too. My wife's ready to go. I gotta go.
Yes.
it.
All right, Sonny. Take care,
All right,
man.
we
I
had
a
hope to
good
see
time.
you soon.
All right,
Chelsea-
thanks.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, you got it. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Okay, bye-bye.
Good show, Sonny. That was fun. You know, it was fun. So you've been listening to the Big East Rewind with Sonny Sparrow and Chuck Everson. Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. You can check us out on all things social media by putting Big East Rewind in the search bar. And our website is www.bigeastrewind.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. This was an all-timer. Thank you.